So I'm going now to read second part on Sri Aurobindo's letters on yoga, especially the chapter on surrender. The inner surrender. It was never my intention to suggest that there was only a faint hope of your sadhana depending on the if of surrender. I have always said that the contrary, that since your soul wants the divine truly, you are sure to reach him only if you give up, and that is why I strongly object to these despondencies, apart from the suffering they inflict. Because they try to drive you to that, can it be frustrated or rather postponed to a future, far future? What I wrote was in answer to your statement about your former idea of the yoga that if one wanted the divine himself would take up the purifying of the hurt and develop the sadhana and give the necessary experiences. I meant to say that it can and does happen in that way if one has trust and confidence in the divine and the will to surrender. For such a taking up involves one's putting oneself in the hands of the divine rather than trusting to one's own efforts alone, and it implies one's putting one's trust and confidence in the divine and progressive self-giving. It is in fact the principle of the sadhana that I myself followed, and it is the central part of the yoga as I envisage it. It is, I suppose, what Ramakrishna meant by the method of the baby cat in his image. But all cannot follow that at once. It takes time for them to arrive at it. It grows most when the mind and vital fall quiet. What I meant by surrender was this inner surrender of the mind and vital. There is, of course, the outer surrender also, the giving up of all that is found to conflict with the spirit or need of the sadhana, the offering, the obedience to the guidance of the divine, whether directly, if one has reached that stage, or through the psychic or to the guidance of the guru. I may say that Prayopavesana does not seem to me to have anything to do with surrender. It is a form of tapasya, of a very austere and, in my opinion, very excessive kind, often dangerous. But what I was speaking of in my letter was the inner surrender. The core of this inner surrender is trust and confidence in the divine. One takes the attitude, I want the divine and nothing else. I do not know why I should think that you can be asked to give up that. If there is not that, then the yoga cannot be done. I want to give myself entirely to him, and since my soul wants that, it cannot be but that I shall meet him and realize him. I ask nothing but that, and since this action in me to bring me to him, his action secret or open, veiled or manifest. I repeat this sentence. I ask nothing but that and his action in me to bring me to him, his action secret or open, veiled or manifest. I do not insist on my own time and way. Let him do all in his own time and way. I shall believe in him, accept his will, aspire steadily for his light and presence and joy, go through all difficulties and delays, relying on him and never giving up. Let my mind be quiet and turn to him, and let him open it to his light. Let my vital be quiet and turn to him alone, and let him open it to his calm and joy. All for him and myself for him. Whatever happens, I will keep to this aspiration and self-giving, and go on in perfect reliance that it will be done. That is the attitude into which one must grow, for certainly it cannot be made perfect at once. Mental and vital movement can come across. But if one keeps the will to it, it will grow in the being. The rest is a matter of obedience to the guidance when it makes itself manifest, not allowing one's mental or vital movements to interfere. It was not my intention to say that this is the only way and sadhana cannot be done otherwise. There are so many others by which one can approach the divine. But this is the only one by which I know by which the taking up of the sadhana by the divine becomes a sensible fact before the preparation of the nature is done. In other methods, the divine action and help may be felt from time to time, but remains mostly behind the veil till all is ready. In some sadhanas, the divine action is not recognized. All must be done by tapasya. In most, there is a mixing of the two, the tapasya finally calling the direct help and intervention, the idea and experience of the divine doing all belongs to the yogas based on surrender. But whatever way is followed, the one thing to be done is to be faithful and go to the end. You have so often taken that decision. Stand by it. Do not let the storms of the vital quench the aspiration of your soul. It depends on the sadhak whether the surrender should begin from within. Some may find it necessary to surrender to the external activities first, so as to bring the inner surrender. I have said that if one has the central surrender, the next subchapter now is the central surrender. I have said that if one has the principle of surrender and union in the mind and heart, there is no difficulty in extending it to the obscurer parts of the physical and the subconscious. As you have this central surrender and union, you can easily complete it everywhere. A quiet aspiration for complete consciousness is all that is needed. Then the material and subconscious will become penetrated by the light like the rest, and there will come in a quietude, whiteness, harmony, free from all reactions, what will be the basis of the final change. When the psychic being and the heart and the thinking mind have surrendered, the rest is a matter of time and process, and there is no reason for disturbance. The central and effective surrender has been made. Subchapter: Complete or Absolute Surrender. If you have surrendered only the higher consciousness with no peace or purity, in the lower, certainly that is not enough, and you have to aspire for peace and purity everywhere. It, surrender, cannot be absolutely complete in the beginning, but it can be true. If the central will is sincere, there is the faith and the bhakti. There may be contrary movements, but these will be unable to stand for long, and the imperfection of the surrender in the lower part will not seriously interfere with the power and pervasiveness of the inner attitude. A complete surrender is not possible in so short a time. For a complete surrender means to cut the knot of the ego in each part of the being and offer it free and whole to the divine. The mind, the vital, the physical consciousness, and even each part of these in all its movements have one after the other to surrender separately, to give up their own way and to accept the way of the divine. But what one can do is to make from the beginning a central resolve and self-dedication, and to implement it in whatever way one finds open at each step, taking advantage of each occasion that offers itself to make the self-giving complete. A surrender in one direction makes other easier, more inevitable, but it does not of itself cut or loose the outer knots, and especially those which are very intimately bound up with the present personality and its most cherished formations, may often present great difficulties, even after the central will has been fixed and the first seals put on its resolve in practice. You can get the full surrender only by degrees. Meanwhile, you have to got on the straight path, not regarding the suggestions that are put into you through the vital or physical parts. It is on that consciousness of complete surrender that the psychic foundation of sadhana can be made. If once it fixes itself, then, whatever difficulties remain to be overcome, the course of the sadhana becomes perfectly easy, sunlit, natural, like the opening of a flower. The feeling you have is an indication of what can and must be and must develop in you. It depends on what is meant by absolute surrender. The experience of it in some part of the being or the effect of it in all parts of the being. The former may easily come at any time. It is in the latter that takes time to complete. The absolute surrender must be not only an experience in meditation, but a fact governing all life, all the thoughts, feelings, actions. Till then, the use of one's own will and effort is necessary, but an effort in which also there is the spirit of surrender, calling in the force to support the will and of effort and undisturbed by success or failure. When the force takes up the sadhana, then indeed effort may cease. But still there will be the necessity of a constant ascent of the being and a vigilance so that one may not admit a false force at any point. It is never too early to make the complete surrender. Some things may need to wait, but not that. Okay, so far so good. That was Sri Aurobindo on the surrender. So this next chapter is subchapter is the surrender of the vital. The surrender of the vital is always difficult because of the unwillingness of the force of the universal vital ignorance But that does not mean a fundamental incapacity. The ordinary vital is never willing to surrender. True inmost vital is different. Surrender to the divine is as necessary to it as to the psychic. If there's any identification with the vital demands or outcries, that necessarily diminishes the surrender for the time. What is the surrender to which there is no response? Surrender and demands don't go together. Evidently, the vital is not afraid of thinking illogical and self-contradictory nonsense. So long as the vital keeps up its demands, these things will come. What is the surrender to which there is no response? Okay. I remind you that these letters are all the answers that Sri Aurobindo gave to his disciples, but here are not printed the questions, so sometimes it may seem a bit obscure what he's talking about or to what kind of question he is answering. But probably he was answering to a disciple who was said, I always try to surrender, but there is no response. And in fact, if you ask and pretend a response, this is already the sign that there is no real surrender. Okay, so the next letter was, we don't know the question anyhow. It was from your description of the reaction that I said there was a vital demand. In the pure psychic or spiritual self-giving, there are no reaction of this kind. Yes, in fact, so you see. No despondency or despair, no saying, what have I gained by seeking the divine? No anger, revolt, abhiman, wish to go away, such as you describe here, but an absolute confidence and persistence in clinging to the divine under all conditions. That is what I wanted you to have. It is the only basis in which one is free from troubles and reactions and goes steadily forward. Not to impose one's mind and vital will on the divine, but to receive the divine's will and follow it, is a true attitude of sadhana. Not to say, this is my right, want, claim, need, requirement, why do I not get it? But to give oneself to surrender and to receive with joy whatever the divine gives, not grieving or revolting, is a better way. Then what you receive will be the right thing for you. The divine is not bound to do that, supply all one's real needs. He can give or not give. Whether he gives or does not give makes no difference to the one who is surrendered to him. Otherwise, there is an arrière-pensée in the surrender, which is not then complete. I remind was Sri Aurobindo once saying that the divine is not a slot machine. Well, I think this is an image that makes it very clear what he means by that. Most of the sadhaks have similar thoughts of hostility and ingratitude, or had them at one time or another. They rise from the vital ego, which either does not want the divine or wants it for its own purpose and not for the divine's purpose. It gets furious when it is pressed to change or when its desires are not satisfied. That is at the root of all the things. That is why we insist on surrender in this yoga, because it is only by the surrender, especially of the vital ego, that these things can go. To accept the divine for the divine's sake and for no other motive, in the divine's way and not in the one's own way or on one's own conditions. Difficult? It is the first principle of our sadhana, that surrender is the means of fulfillment, and so long as ego or vital demand and desire are cherished, complete surrender is impossible. The self-giving is incomplete. Complete surrender is impossible. The self-giving, sorry. Complete surrender is impossible, so self-giving is incomplete. We have never considered that, and it may be difficult, and it is, but it is the very principle of the sadhana. Because it is difficult, it has to be done steadily and patiently, till the work is complete. Your mind and psychic being are concentrated on the spiritual aim and open to the divine. That is why the influences come down into the head and as far as the heart. But the vital being and nature and the physical consciousness are under the influence of the lower nature. As long as the vital and psychic being are not surrendered, or do not their own account call for their higher life, this struggle is likely to continue. Surrender everything. Reject all other desires or interests. Call on the divine Shakti to open the vital nature and bring down calm, peace, light, ananda into all the centers. Aspire, wait with faith and patience the result. All depends on the complete sincerity and an integral consecration and aspiration. The world will trouble you so long as any part of you belongs to the world. It is only if you belong entirely to the divine that you can become free. So, at this point, I stop here, for the moment at least. If you have some comment, you can let it in the comments on the YouTube channel. If you like it, also a like. And I will begin again about 5 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time.